It's so great to be with you all. I've loved the Journey Church and Matt and Jen for a long time. Matt and I started churches about the same time together back in the mid 2000s and became good friends. And I've loved you guys from Tennessee and what you've done. You guys have been on the forefront of what our nation, what our communities need. So thank you for letting me be here. A couple months ago, Matt asked me about being part of this series about a hunt for happiness, about seeking happiness. And I've loved it. I followed along online with you. And I thought about an example, and we're in football season, and it's for some of us, it's a little more exciting than others. But it reminded me of an interview that I seen with Tom Brady. Tom Brady was an NFL quarterback. Some people say that he was the greatest of all times. He's won more Super Bowls than any quarterback, I think 7, and lost a couple. Had millions and millions of dollars, and at this point in his life probably has billions of dollars. And he was on a 60-minute show, and they were interviewing him, and they were asking about his life, about, man, all this stuff is going on, and you're married to a supermodel, and you got all the money, and you're a celebrity. You have everything you could possibly want. Many of the things that many of us think make happiness. And this was Tom's response in the interview. Why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and still think there's something greater out there for me? A lot of people would say this is what it is. I reached my goal, my dream, my life. Me, I think God has got to be more than this. Now, what an example of what we have been talking about for the last couple of weeks. I mean, a perfect example, the big principle in week 1 was being consumed with you will ultimately consume you. I mean, when you are the end to your life, it is eventually going to consume you. You'll crash. And if you've been down that road, you know that to be true. And to be up front, what I'll be talking about this morning is from a Christian perspective. It's a Christian worldview. The whole series has been a Christian worldview, a Jesus approach to happiness in fulfillment. And Jesus says that what consumes you is ultimately going to cause you to make the decisions that you do in life. But there's another thing that we also learned, because just being consumed with you is one thing, but last week you talked about the answer. If I'm not consumed with myself, then what am I going to be consumed with? Because you will be consumed with something. You will choose in your life to be consumed with something. And meaning in life is found by being a means to an end that's bigger than ourselves. Purpose. I loved the answer that was pointed to Jesus about what should consume us. Because our purpose, more than anything, is going to create and cause satisfaction and fulfillment and ultimately happiness. Happiness, we've learned in the last couple of weeks, is a byproduct of something, not the end of something. And Jesus says, purpose, what you were created for. Christian worldview. I believe many of you believe in here that God created us, God created me, and He put me together specifically, and God is a master craftsman. And even though I feel like junk sometimes, God doesn't make junk. He made me with a purpose, and the only way that I'm ever going to achieve the happiness that I want, because God created me to want happiness too. There's nothing wrong with that, unless that's your ultimate end, because it leaves us lacking. God created the purpose in me. And today we're going to look at, how do I get to that life that's big enough? How do I take the step? What do I need to do? And I think the answer to that depends on you, and it depends on your lens or your filter. So early on, one of the last 2 weeks, we considered the idea that all of us make the decisions every day about what is going to make me happy. One of the most important decisions that shapes who we are. And again, please don't think that that is a bad thing, because that's not a bad thing. I choose the kind of toothpaste that I want because I like it. I choose what I wear, where I buy it from. I choose what I do because of things that bring me enjoyment. There's nothing wrong with making decisions unless that is your end game. And it depends on what kind of lens or what kind of focus that you have. When I think about lenses and how I think in the past couple of weeks, Matt used the word filters. What's the filter? I use the word lens because I get that. I need glasses. And there's two ideas that I have about why we go to the optometrist or why we go to the eye doctor. And the first one's obvious. The big reason that we go to an eye doctor is because we can't see, right? We got blurry vision. Duh, why did you come here to tell us that? I mean, the obvious big reason why we go to an eye doctor is there's something out of focus or there's something wrong, and then I go and he gives me different lenses or contacts or recommends surgery or something like that, and you fix that thing. But here's the scary reason, the second thing, the scary reason that we don't go to an eye doctor is because we don't know we have blurry vision. It scares me to death. The scary reason why we don't go is because we don't realize that we are seeing out of focus. A couple years ago, I went to the eye doctor who's a friend of mine, Tim. We fished together. And so we fished a couple of times and I needed some glasses. And so I go and we do the thing. And, he's like, hey, look through these things and tell me, is A clear or is B clear? Click, click, and is B or C or B or D, and we do the deal. And we get through all that stuff. And he's like, oh, yeah, you haven't changed that much, whatever. And he says, Jeff, can you see good when you read? And when you look at a computer, can you see good? I was like, oh yeah, I don't have any problem with that at all. I mean, I'm good. I just can't see far away. And he was like, he handed me a half sheet of laminated paper, and it had 3 paragraphs on it. And he says, okay, just hold that comfortably and start at the top and read that. And I was like, man, I think he's trying to test me on this deal. So I'm holding it like this right here. And when I look down, I'm like, sweet, because it was a Bible verse. And I was like, man, I got this. I thought, man, he just making it easy on me. And then when I actually look at it, it's John 3:16. And I was like, man, I've known this verse. And so I look at the first one in its big font, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, man, I can read this one with my eyes closed, Doc. For God so loved the world. And then the middle one was smaller. And then the really smallest one, and I sometimes think that eye doctors put the smallest font that they can, like number 4 or 6 font that's so tiny, just to prove a point, right? I mean, they just want you to know. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I can kind of read that, but I know what the verse says. And so I'm like, man, just for God so loved. And he's like, good. And he's like, how is that? And I was like, man, I don't have a problem with that. And he says, okay, take these glasses and put them on and then look. So I took the glasses and I put glasses on, and I looked at it and boom. I was like, stink. This is so clear. This is so easy. The bottom one was so easy to read. With lenses that I didn't know I needed, showed me that I was defocused and didn't realize it. And I was like, Tim, did you know this? And he was like, I thought so. How come? We've been fishing together, and he was like, I could see how you struggled to put your fishing line through a fly. Scary thing is when we don't see clearly, we don't realize it. And it's one thing when it has to do with reading and tying flies and that kind of stuff, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about a spiritual application on that. And there's a reason why you and I fall into the trap of not realizing that our vision is blurry. It's real logical. And in week 1 of this series, Matt started to touch on it. It was from Mark chapter 8, I think, And Jesus was talking about, this is what you do to follow me. If you really want to follow me and you want to have the greatest life, Jesus talked about life and how to have happiness and abundance, and not just survive, but not just to survive, but to thrive in life. And he used that verse. If anyone wants to follow me, they must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. Wow, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If I want to save something, I don't lose it. But that's not the only thing that Jesus said that didn't make sense. He said stuff like, hey, if you're a Christian, if you're a Christ follower, if you want to be first, be last. But that doesn't make sense in anything else in life other than maybe with you, Jesus. If you want to be full, empty yourself. If you want to be the greatest, then become the least. And the reason why we can have a defocus and not see clearly from a Christ-following perspective is because what Jesus requires is totally counterintuitive to what we think and who we are. It's not how we default. There's nothing in life where I'm like, okay, I'm going to prepare and I'm going to practice and I'm going to do this and I want to be successful and I want to win and I want to get first place and I want to pass the test and I want to cut the deal and I want to get this job and I want to win her over and I want to win him over. There's nothing in life that is so counterintuitive, paradoxical, different than how we default, than what Jesus requires of us if we want to follow him and find the happiness that we're looking for. And there's a guy named Paul in the Bible who talked about this, and not only did he talk about it, he actually, even more so than talk about it, he's the greatest example. He's a great example of what Jesus was talking about, of someone who was so defocused and didn't realize it. He had to make an intentional change in his life. And his name was Saul, and then it got turned to Paul when his life got turned around. And he's actually an example of what Jesus was talking about in Mark chapter 8 when he says, deny yourself, take up your cross, become less, become least. And Paul was so defocused. He was so out of focus. This guy, and he was recorded not just in the Bible. So the Bible is an accurate account of Paul's life, but there's other secular sources that talk about Paul and that talk about a changed life and it talks about how he became differently and what his life looked like. But he was so warped in his thinking and didn't realize it. He would support the persecution and actually murdering of good people who were just trying to follow Jesus. Life was all about him. He was consuming, and what was important to him was what he did and what he didn't do. And he took a lot of pride in that. And he consumed himself and he consumed religion and didn't realize that he was off track until one day, and this is recorded in another book of the Bible called Acts. And Acts is really just a history of the church. And when Paul's life changed, Jesus actually blinded him. And I would go back and read that because it's so cool and fills in the story. Physically blinded him so he could no longer see for days. So that Jesus could get a hold of him. And he could begin to realize that he was living a scary life because he didn't realize that he was so out of focus. And later on in his life, Paul writes to a church in a town in a city called Galatia. In the New Testament, there's a book, a letter, an epistle called Galatians. And Paul's writing to these Christians. And he really comes full circle. He really comes and he's kind of the answer to what Jesus talked about that is so counterintuitive that he requires of his followers to see clearly. And this is what Paul said in Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. I've been crucified. For us, crucifixion is a word, and the only time we probably consider it is when we talk about Jesus, because we know Jesus was crucified. But for Paul and for that church, they would see people crucified. They knew exactly what that meant for someone to be dead, to no longer have life. And yet Paul paints this picture of a dead person crucified, and then he says, but it's not about being dead, it's about now I'm living differently. Remember, Jesus said it like this: take up your cross. It's a picture of preparing for crucifixion, of you not being the end of yourself, of something else happening. Paul says, I have learned to see life differently. Now I live in such a way that part of me is crucified and part of me lives. And that part of me that lives is Jesus. And looking through life with a Jesus lens changes everything. You're going to be consumed with something. And God gives you and God gives I the privilege of choosing what will be consumed with. But here's the beautiful truth: being consumed with Jesus will ultimately consume you too. So we could be consumed with ourselves and it will ultimately consume us. But if we're consumed with Jesus like Paul was, then Jesus and how he saw and how he lived and how he behaved will begin to consume us. And going through life consumed, not with your own life, we crucify that. We learn, we discipline ourselves to live differently. Paul says you can be consumed with Jesus, and that will consume you, and that will fulfill you, and that will bring you more happiness, and that's going to show you your purpose for what you are created. Paul goes on, the life that I now live, not my old life, there's a new life. I'm looking through new eyes now, new lenses. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith, trust in the Son of God. For some of us, the bottom line issue is trust. Because for me to follow somebody that is so counterintuitive to how I'm wired, for me to empty myself, for me to choose to become last, I have to trust. For me, who is going to tell me to give my time and my money and my energy and my life? For me to tell me how a marriage looks and how my sexual life looks, how my sexual identity looks? I have to trust. For me to tell me how to conduct myself in business and character and relationships? For me to listen to someone who tells me what can go on in my mind, what I can look at and what I can't look at? I have to trust. I live by faith, by trust in the Son of God. And here's why. It's no longer about following rules, because Paul was a rule follower. This is what motivates Paul now, who loved me. He didn't only love me. He proved it because he sacrificed his life. That which motivated Paul to begin making intentional decisions rather than continuing to consume his own self was to start pursuing Jesus And what motivated that was the love of Jesus Christ. And he's living differently. He changed lens. The paradox is you find life when you give your life away to the one who gave you life in the first place. You will find the happiness and the life that you want when you give your life away to the one who gave you life in the first place. And we already know, you can go back and look at the rest of the series. It's beautiful. You will not find happiness and purpose accidentally. You have to be on purpose. And things change. Happiness isn't found. It's a result of intentional life changes. It's when your time doesn't only benefit you any longer, but you're a tool used by God. Your resources are not just for your own consumption, but they become something bigger for the mission of God. And relationships aren't what people can do for you, but opportunities for you to love somebody else. The lens changes are dramatic, and it changes everything. And honestly, I think I'm an example of this because I had to change lenses because, again, I don't go out looking to lose and looking to give everything away and looking to emptying myself. So I've had to intentionally do things in my own life because the scary thing is, because I don't naturally default to being Christian, I have to surround myself with people that will let me know, hey, Jeff, man, that thinking, I think you're a little off on that. Hey, Jeff, man, that's a pretty selfish thought. A couple months ago when Matt emailed me and said, hey, would you come up here to the Journey Church? And as much as I loved you, if I wouldn't have changed his lenses in my lives, I'd been like, heck no. And the reason why is because yesterday was opening deer season, gun season in Tennessee. I left hunting camp yesterday. And for decades, me and my dad and some buddies, we would go hunting for a week before Thanksgiving. See, if I wouldn't have had a lens change, I'd be like, no, my time is about me and I've already got something planned. My resource is what I'm going to do with my energy. The relationship isn't just, Matt has done a ton for me. And I like that until I have to do something for him. If I wouldn't have changed lenses in my life, I'd have been like, if I would have read his email, hey, are you available and can we talk about this? And it would have been pretty simple. Heck no. Done got plans. See, what I have to do in my life is before I start checking emails and before I start looking at feeds and before I respond to texts and before I do anything, every morning for me to try as best I can to put the correct lens for me to live my day. I have to remind myself of a principle. One of the principles that are in this message or the past couple, or a Bible verse. I've been crucified with Christ and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Jesus, today help me. And when I prayed that prayer, I didn't realize that 15 minutes later, I was going to read an email from a friend who said, hey, can you come up here during your favorite hunting day of the season? Big enough life happens when it flows through you, not just to you. The big life that you're looking for will only happen when it flows through you, it doesn't stop with you. Last week was so clear. You're not the end. You're not big enough. You were created for something much bigger than just being a consumer in life. God created you for something so much bigger, and life happens when it flows through you, and God uses who you are and what He blessed you with to be a part of something, and that something is His mission and His message. And the great news is that the Journey Church is doing it. Man, a bunch of you are already doing it and need to continue to do it. I love to hear Matt talk about you and what you guys are doing when he's away from here, when I see him in another place. What you're doing not just in Murray, Kentucky, and not just in Kentucky, but around the world. How you've changed lenses. How your lens is not just blue colored. But most of you are smart enough, even at the beginning of the season, to know you shouldn't have done that, right? I mean, you shouldn't have put that up there. Tennessee fans, we're not that smart. Beginning of the year, we thought that we were there talking about college playoffs, potential, high ceiling, all the great things with these orange colored lenses. And it's almost like they forgot that they're starting everything quarterback quit in the spring. And they had a quarterback that hadn't played in the SEC before. When you got them orange colored glasses on, it doesn't matter because you don't see clearly. You have high expectations and high hopes. And again, I know it's a little bit harder for you all to realize that in football, but basketball, you got a little more hope. Baseball now, you got a lot of hope. Fans are fanatics because they put these shades in front of their eyes and they no longer see clearly. And we're not talking about sports. You know how uptight and focused, how much time and energy some people can put in to following a team? It's not orange and it's not blue. It is so much bigger. And even if Kentucky won the national championship, when they do one year, it's going to be fun for a little while. You'll run your mouth for a little while. And that's good. But it's not going to give you purpose. And it's not going to last. And it's not going to fulfill you. Our broken world is desperate for churches like this, for Christ followers who see life through a Jesus lens. They see a real Jesus who's irresistible, and they experience His love and His grace. And it's the only hope and the only solution that Murray, Kentucky has, that Tennessee has. It's the only hope that the United States of America has. It's the only hope, and you have that hope in you. Would you do the counterintuitive? Would you do what doesn't seem natural and begin to consume Jesus more than anything else? And if you do, you'll see a change in your life. You'll begin to see things differently. And that differently will surprise you when it just pops out there and you're like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. The only way, and I'm going to encourage you to do this week, this is the pastor's heart. And if you got a better way and it works, then man, do it. But the only way that I know how to do it in my own life is before I do anything, I got to do it every day. And I could be slower than most. I mean, maybe everybody doesn't have to. But before I start, I've developed a pattern to not do certain things before I say, Jeff, if you're the end, you're not big enough. Jesus, as I live this day, help me to live it in such a way that I don't make decisions like I'm the end. Sometimes it's a Bible verse because I change. I've done it before, and my verse was, as I get out of bed and I've learned, in the beginning, I had to take a Post-it and put Jesus first. Think of Jesus before you start thinking about anything else. And I knew that week or that month, set your mind on things above where Jesus is seated at the right hand of God. As I'm getting out of bed, God, help me to set my mind on the things that I know that matter most, but that don't come naturally to me. God, I want to talk to you a little bit about this before I start my day, before I start dealing with emails and all the other stuff. God, help me. God, be able, like my eye doctor friend Tim, who said, hey, Jeff, I know you don't think that you need new lenses, but you do. And it changes everything. The world needs a group of contagious Christians who irresistibly share the love of Jesus and change lives. And the beautiful thing for you is, by consuming that mission, it's going to absolutely change yours. Would you pray with me, please? God, thank you so much for loving us. And Jesus, thank you so much for giving us a worldview that is so clear on how to accomplish purpose in life. And we've learned that when we're pursuing purpose, fulfillment and happiness is going to come our way. God, I pray for each person that is here this morning that they would intentionally this week start every day reminding themselves that we have to put a Jesus lens before we go to school, before we go to work, before we talk to our neighbor, before we wake up our kids. God, we are desperate and we will mess up a lot of things. Help us not substitute the stuff that seems to come naturally. Help us not to have the most important lens in front of our decision making being one that prioritizes happiness overall. And God, we also thank you that when we pursue and consume you wholeheartedly, when we trust you with all of the things that you've given us, that happiness, fulfillment, peace, and purpose, those things that we long for, will come. May we do this as individuals. May we do this as a church. And God, will you bless and continue to bless the Jesus followers coming to Journey Church so that they can continue to be on the forefront of sharing the good news that you've given us. Thank you for making us bigger than ourselves and allowing us and entrusting us with your mission and your message. Pray all these things. In the name of Jesus, amen.